What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I'm going to bring you my 4th place Yubel update. Now I'm going to do this profile a little bit differently. I'm just going to show you all of the sections in one go rather than card by card, and it's more so just to explain how the experience went with this version of the deck, the updates that I made, what I'd want to change back, and what I might change going forward. I'll also show you a demo side deck as well at the end of the video just so you can kind of see what I kind of played, and I'll talk you through some of the siding patterns as well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So for the Yubel cards themselves, we were playing triple Spirit alongside triple Lotus, and of course 2 Grey Squirmers. I know some people play 3 of this. I've kind of personally found that 2 is more than enough. Yes, it's great if you open it up because then it means your other search target more times than not when you go for your Nightmare Pain, or being able to try and play for a Ghost Ogre is it a little bit more successful. But 2 just kind of has worked for me. I may change it to 3 and keep messing around with the ratios once the deck keeps adapting. But once we get Phantom Nightmare, or Phantom Pain, Phantom of Yubel, then that might change again as well. Then of course we've got the 1 Yubel and the 1 Terra Incarnate. Again, I don't feel that you need the Unending Nightmare. It is entirely up to you though. If you do choose to play it, that's not the end of the world. I just kind of feel that this one worked out completely fine for me. In this version, I did decide to go down to 2 Nightmare Pain. Now, I was trying to find some space for it. It is a 44 card deck. There is the possibility you could go to 45 if you wanted to, but my overall experience with the 44 wasn't, like, there's a couple of cards in here that I would still cut out, and I don't feel that need to be cut out to be replaced with anything. It was just one of the ones that I really wanted to try certain avenues of the deck and routes of combos and everything else, but it never really came up. So arguably I'd probably want to cut these down. I still personally prefer the Nadir Servant version just because it's a single power card. And the only time it will become completely dead is if you're playing D-Shifter. But that being said, if you are playing D-Shifter, that's when you can side out the Nadir package. D-Shifter wasn't in the main deck or the side deck, so it's something that I would consider putting back into it. Because my matchups were, trying to remember them off the top of my head. So the first one was Voiceless Voice, which I ended up drawing. Game 1 went really, really well. Game 2 I misplayed. And then ultimately ended up losing that one, and then game 3 there was like 2 minutes left and there was no way that either of us could do burn damage. Game 2 was against Snake Eyes Infernoid, which literally just caught me off guard. I didn't open that well, but even then they hand trapped me and I was like, okay, cool, I'm guessing I'm going to have to pass there. Passed, and then the next thing I know, I was staring down a Calamity turn skip. And then in game 2, we ultimately ended up going to time, but both of us bricked pretty badly. Like, I saw all of my Unchained cards and none of my Yubel starters. And then ultimately they were able to get the damage on board and time was caught, and it's like, okay, cool. But yeah, that really caught me off guard. I thought it was a great little bit of... I was not expecting the Infernoids at all. I wasn't even expecting the Snake Eyes, but when I saw them together, I was like, oh, damn, this works really, really well. And yeah, it caught me off guard. After that was Snake Eyes Fire King. That went a little bit better. I ended up winning that one. And then the final round was against Evil Eyes, which was actually, again, really, really interesting because it allowed me to see how this deck could perform through multiple hand traps. I ended up getting drolled, and I was like, yeah, they main deck droll. And then I got impermed as well. So, like, luckily I got drolled, and I was like, well, I think I know they main deck droll, so I need to play around it a little bit more. So when I activated Nightmare Throne, I could have played a little bit better. I could have searched out the Grey Squirmer, but I didn't. I searched out the Dark Beckoning Beast because I already had the Lotus, and I was like, right, okay, cool. Normal Summon Lotus, Tribute off, and they went Ash. I was like, damn. Was it Ash? Ash or Imperm, and I was just like, damn, okay, I got stopped multiple times. Either way, I ended up winning that one. There's a lot of grind back and forth, and the Evil Eye deck is incredibly scary because the idea was that they were playing, like, they were able to get up to a Unchained Abomination using my monster, without using their normal summon, and then they searched out Surzial, normal summon Surzial, and I was like, right, okay, so even though you're going to be burning away at your own life points bit by bit, ultimately what they've set up, because they've got Abomination and they've got Surzial, is they're setting up a double pop every turn, which was pretty damaging. Anyway, carrying on with the Yubel cards, of course, we've got the 1 Eternal Favourite, and then 3 Nightmare Throne, and technically the Honorary Terraforming and 1-for-1, which are basically the power plays to get you into this engine here. So your 1-for-1 will get you into the Samsara D Lotus, your Terraforming gets you into Nightmare Throne. I think I saw Throne in like 1 game, so it is that incredibly good. It's just a shame you don't see it as consistently as you would have liked to see it. So that's it for the Yubel cards themselves. Obviously, they do take the majority of the deck, which is why this isn't like an Unchained Yubel or anything else. Like, yes, you do play Unchained cards, but you're only playing 3 of them, and you are playing the Dark Beckoning engine. So for the Dark Beckoning engine, of course, I'm still on the 3 Beast and the 1 Gate. Personally, I've not had an issue with this. I know people play it a little bit differently. That's absolutely fine. This is just my personal ratio. I like it. I like the way it works. The one time that I opening a Spirit Gate, I also opened up Dark Beckoning, and I was like, well, this is annoying. But I don't want to really, like, personally, I don't want to see the opening of Spirit Gates. I want to search it. Yes, obviously, it's a little bit more damaging in a droll format. But what I was finding more times than not is a lot of people that knew how to play against Yubel, because Yubel's been in the local environment for quite a while now, were very rarely stopping the Dark Beckoning because they always feared that there could still be an opening gate that allowed it to go through. Now, an imperm on Dark Beckoning really does suck. But that being said, a lot of people were going, okay, cool, I don't mind that, because you'll go Dark Beckoning Beast, and they'll go, yeah, okay, I'll let that resolve. Get opening gates, that's when you get drolled. Or you get opening gates, you activate opening gates, you get the Dark Beckoning. And more times than not, what people were doing is they're holding the ashes for the lotuses, which I also found quite interesting. But then if you end up going additional normal summon of a second Dark Beckoning, it shows that you don't have the lotus. So then when you go into a Yama, they just go, oh, cool, Ash on the Yama. And then straight away, that's like, okay, cool, just as much of a stopping point, but you've been left with a stronger monster on the board. The other downside is it does leave you with your monsters in the grave, so you can technically discard a card, bring one back, and then go link free and keep building up. So you've got the ability to play for a lot more. But yeah, this is my personal ratio. Everyone plays it a little bit differently. For the Unchained cards, of course, got the one Shavara. I went with the one Shayama and the one Abominable Chamber. Now, I'm going to be cutting this back out. The main reason for this was this will instigate the ability to get you into this, which is incredibly powerful. Because when you're ending your board on a high Wave King Caesar, you just have even more forms of interruption that your opponent just struggles to deal with, which is really, really important. The issue is, in order to get to this point, it's very specific. You need to hold back your Grave Squirmer throughout most of your combo. And the idea is you're going to get into Yama. Yama searches out your Shavara. You still need to get Shavara to the board. You then need to link off the Shavara to get the chamber. Then what you're doing here is you're using your Grave Squirmer to bring back. So what you do is you use Grave Squirmer to bring back, I think it's Spirit of Yubel. You use Shavara to pop the Spirit of Yubel. And the idea is what you're trying to do... Basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get Yama into the graveyard so that you can pop a card on the field so that Yama triggers to revive the Shavara. And then you use the Shayama in the graveyard because you bring back the Yama revives the Shavara, pops the Abominable Chamber, and the chamber gets you Shayama, and then you overlay both of those into the High Wave King. So it's a complicated route. It's risk and reward. It's risk that you need to play this additional brick. It's reward that you get to get into this, but it's also risk that it means that you need to make sure, or like your opponent just either has no forms of interruption because you have to open up in order to get your full end board plus the High King Caesar, is you have to open up Beckoning and Samsara, which then means your opponent needs to not have a Veiler, a Morna, an Ash, an Imperm. Even a Nibiru will really kind of stumble the combo as well. So the idea is that your end board will be near perfect because it will be a High Wave King Caesar, you'll have Nightmare Pain in rotation, you'll also have Recursion from hand advantage, plus you end up with the rank 10 and you also end up with Rage, leading into SP. So that's like your perfect end board, which is absolutely insane. But it's very, very direct in order to get to that point is what I'm trying to say. Then for some board breaking cards, I decided to main deck Fenris and Super Polys. Obviously, Super Polys relatively standard on this one. The Fenris is like a last minute change, and the reason I said this is because there's quite a few Yubel decks at locals, you have to build your deck with cards that can counteract that, which are also going to be different in the mirror match. Because if the mirror match is card for card exactly the same, then it's just going to come down to who's drawn better, a bit more of a grind, and everything else. Whereas if you have little different tech cards or cards that the other opponent might not be using, like a Fenrir, that gives you an advantage. And what I mean by that, the reason that Fenrir is so good is that Fenrir can then out the Nightmare Pain alongside stuff with like Ghost Ogres and everything else. That's why I personally quite like the Nadir version, because I feel by the time I get to the point where I want to activate Nadir, my opponent has probably already ashed me, imperm me, like used their hand traps, and the only risk that I'm giving them is when I use Maximus, if they can send cards that gain them advantage. Other than that, my route of play off of the back of the Nadir package would be to send the Chimera the Illusion Beast, which gives you the ability to banish it and summon back a Fiend monster, as well as the ability of being able to window lock your opponent. Yes, of course, your opponent, like when you're window locking your opponent, you're pretty much shutting down Tempites so they can't board nuke you. And then when they can't board nuke you, you're still sitting on a window that can't attack directly, which is fine. And then you've got a Yubel with a Nightmare Pain. So the idea is that you'll be able to go, okay, Yubel into their one monster, and then Winder kill that one monster. So then they're back to square one, and you're just going into a bit more of a slowed down grind game, which is why I really like the Nadir package. It's something that I might consider putting back into the deck, but there's not a lot that you could definitely take out. Like, definitely if I took out the Shayama, this then unlocks a space in the extra deck, and then it's looking for other cards you can take out in the main deck in order to kind of find that space or allow you to still play the Nadir combo. Carrying on, so for the hand traps and then anti-hand traps, obviously I went with the 3 Ashes, 2 Ogres, 2 Talents, 1 Call by, triple Imperm. Pretty standard on this lineup. I feel that these are pretty much the hand traps of the format. Imperm is just insane. Make sure you don't get Talents in return. Ash Blossom is still incredibly useful. Luckily, I haven't had to face Branded at the moment, but obviously Ash is the king against that. I went with 2 Ghost Ogres because it's good against some matchups, but not so great against others. So it's kind of one of the ones that if you do end up facing Tenpai, which we have a couple of locals, you need to be slightly semi-prepared to deal with their field spell and cut down their consistency, because like literally all Tenpai need to do is get into Kaiman or Black Rose and basically nuke the board and the Yubel, and then you're back to square one, which is quite annoying. And the last 2 cards is 2 Pot Prosperity. Honestly, because this is a 44 card that should probably be a 3, in my opinion, it is very important. The issue is your extra deck is very, very tight, and you'll start to see that now that with the routes of play that I decide to play, there's only, like, I'll show you the cards that I never summoned over the event, and that was obviously the High Wave King because the combo never really came up, and then I think I made like Appaloosa once, I made Underworld Goddess once. So like these 3 cards were very specific, but they're there to do a specific job anyway. For the fusion monsters, of course, you've got your 1 Yubel, the Loving Defender. I actually never summoned this, actually, so that's another one I never summoned. Garura and Mud Dragon. I think I summoned this once and this once, just because it was in the Voiceless Voice matchup. And then for the XYZs, I got the 1 Gym Buster. I actually summoned this once or twice. It's quite useful, just be able to protect you from Nibiru early doors, as well as being able to protect you from other hand traps that they might have been saving in order to disrupt you further. But you could take it out if you wanted to. It'll definitely be taken out once we get the new Phantom of Yubel. The 1 Veratus. Now, this is actually really important for the OTK, and I did it against the Voiceless Voice player, and he basically said, I didn't even know that Yubel could OTK that way. So the way that it works, and I'm just going to skip ahead here, is that we are playing the Amber Whale combo off of the back of Princess. But the way it works is you work your way up into the Amber Whale, you then go into the Veratus. Now, keeping in mind that when you've been making your plays, you might have even used one of your opponent's monsters to link off with, because you can use Anguish to get you into like a Rage, or even into an SP. But the idea is that what you're going to be doing is you'd be going into the battle phase, you would attack with the Amber Whale, and then you would attack with the Veratus, use Veratus' effect to pop the Amber Whale. This would then trigger to bring back the Princess, or technically you can bring back an SP Little Knight as well. But you'd bring back the Princess, and you'd be going in for 3k, 27, and then this would be buffed because this would have at least 2 Link Monsters in the graveyard, so that would be 3k as well. So that's how you kind of complete an OTK with these 3 cards. And then even if you haven't completed the OTK, you'll still have a negate off the back of the Veratus. And then you would choose not to bring back Princess because it will firelock you. So when you destroy this, you'd bring back an SP Little Knight or something else, or even you can bring back a Rage if you've gone through it. Speaking of course, to get you out of the firelock, I did go back to a Nightmare Phoenix. This was suggested to me by Leo and Tom, and I was like, yeah, okay, cool, makes sense. It's a Fiend, it's a fire, so it gets me out of both the locks that you can put yourself into. And there was a couple of times previously where I had locked myself under the Princess because my opponent was just like, yeah, I'm not going to destroy it, I'm going to leave you locked into it. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's a little bit painful. And then, of course, we've got the 1 Yama, 1 Rage, 1 Anguish. Anguish actually put in a lot of work today. And then the 1 SP Little Knight. Now, the only thing that I've got an issue with these two is that this is the only triangle. Like, literally, if you're going second, you can go Anguish, and then Anguish can link with your opponent's monsters to go into an SP or a Rage. And then if you do decide to go into the Rage, it then means that you're not going to be pushing for an OTK, or you don't need to clear something off the board, and you're going to be going into a SP during your opponent's turn. But the idea is that when you're playing this deck and you've got Yubel monsters, you don't really care about the lock of SP not allowing you to attack directly, because the idea would be that you'd go, okay, cool, work your way into an Anguish. Anguish uses one of your opponent's monsters to get into an SP Little Knight. SP Little Knight uses effect to deal with a back row, a floodgate, or another monster that might be causing you an issue. And if they try and chain anything, you can use SP to run away. But then the idea behind that is as long as you leave your opponent with a strong enough monster, you can then rebuild your board with 1, if not 2 Yubels, and then start crashing into them to do the huge amounts of damage that you might need to complete the OTK. So that's it for the extra deck. Moving on to the side deck. So again, this is more local focused, but just to go and give you an idea of what you'd be looking at. So for hand traps, I went with Draw and Lockbird. The idea is that obviously some people don't expect it, some people do expect it, but it's just one of them ones that's incredibly powerful to kind of turn skip your opponent. The only issue, and this is the same with D-Shifter, is right now, because we're in a format with 15 hand traps, a turn skip hand trap or a floodgate hand trap may not always be, or isn't, the competitive win against the higher level decks. And what I mean by that is, in the past you would be able to go Shifter against majority of decks, and they would go, okay, cool, or Droll, and they go, right, okay, cool, pass back to you, and then you'd complete an OTK. Whereas now, even if you Droll or if you Shifter someone, if they're smart enough to hold back their resource and know that they can control you with their hand traps that they are sitting on, because we're in a 15 hand trap format, then it would mean that you go, okay, well, you've got to try and OTK through all of these hand traps. And if you're playing something like Tenpai, for example, if they hand trap you, hand trap you, and then all they need to do is one card to OTK and go, then you're kind of back to square one. So they're still good, they're still useful, but it's the reason why some competitive players might not play Droll and may not play Shifter where they can. I went with 2 Nibiru just for the local environment. Like, there's stuff like some people just undervalue it or disrespect Nibiru, and sometimes there are decks that can't play for it. And then I feel that there's times when people choose not to play Nibiru. That's when the rogue decks that auto lose to Nibiru but are incredibly strong and powerful will come back. So you've got stuff like Madolches, you've got stuff like Heroes as well. Whereas like if the Nibiru hits them, it's pretty much game over. But now they have the ability where not everyone is playing Nibiru, where you can kind of utilize it to your max potential. And then for the back row hate, we went with the 1 Dusters, 2 Lightning Storms, and I went with 2 Cosmics. Honestly, I'd probably cut out the 2 Lightning Storms now, go with 3 Cosmics, but it's a bit give and take. Triple Skill Drain, this is great in the deck just because it kind of reduces it back to the basic levels, and then as long as you have your Spirit of Yubel, you just float your Spirit of Yubel into Yubel into Terra Incarnate, and that's 3 attacks that they're going to be taking. Obviously, if the Terra Incarnate gets destroyed, then you're back with an empty board, but the idea is by the time they've attacked those 3 with Nightmare Pain in rotation, you've pretty much completed the game, and they're under Skill Drain. So, and the last 2 cards, again, local environment is evenly matched. Just because, again, I believe there's times when people disrespect this a little bit or don't expect it, and they're like, yeah, no one's playing this anymore. Again, in a competitive environment, more people will value their battle phase just because of the higher end decks have that ability to regain resource, regain their board state, even after being evened very consistently. And especially when you go evenly with no battle phase and then you're trying to build their board and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, I've still got 5 cards in my hand and all of those are hand traps that are going to stop you building. And then I have my 1 card combo or I have my graveyard to recur my resources through for the next turn that will lead me to game. So that's kind of like I said, this is just the demo option. Now the idea behind all of this is I would take out the Shyama. If I was going second, I would take out the Shyama because I wasn't going to be focusing on the High Wave King. And that's when my stuff like Lightning Storms, Evening Matches, Cosmic Cyclones, Nibirus, like these are all matchup specific. Like if the matchup like determined that these were going to be more effective for me, then obviously I would side some of those out. And the cards that I'd be looking to side out is some of the hand traps. Like if the hand traps are less effective, like at the end of the day, if these are less effective than these, then obviously these are going to be taken out for these. But that's something to consider. And then I would take out the Shyama. I would even take out the trap just because I would be like, right, okay, you know what? I'm just going to push for aggressive OTK. So these are 2 very easy slots. It's like, I'm not going in here for the grind game. I'm going in here because we're going close to game 3. I'm going to be pushing for an OTK. If I was going first, I would sacrifice the Fenrirs for stuff like skill drains because I feel the skill drains, again, in the right matchup would be more effective for me. If I was like, right, well, if I'm going first and I see a Fenrir, is that going to be more effective for me than seeing a skill drain in that particular matchup? And if the answer was no, then obviously I stuck with the skill drains. So that just kind of gives you a bit of an idea. Obviously, more times than not, it will come down to the environment. You'll know your environment better than I will, so you'll know which side deck cards are better for you. It's just learning which cards in your deck are effective going first, more effective going second, and then also going through your deck and going, okay, well, in this particular matchup, this card is less effective for me so that I can side a lot quicker, or this card's more effective for me in the side deck than this one, and you kind of choose the best of the options available for you. Anyway, that is it for the entire profile. I wanted to make this a little bit more informative than just here's the deck list, here's the cards, off you go. I wanted to kind of explain my playstyle behind it. I wanted to kind of explain my choices behind it and give you as much information as possible, which is why this is a much longer video than usual. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.